As I'm getting ready here to do my next live stream, which is on dinosaurs and prehistoric life, and fossils and toys and movies and so on, I haven't been planning a whole lot of actual content that'll come out after the live stream, but I did want to just throw this little quick video together to talk about the new King Kong video game that the trailer dropped not too long ago here, and maybe add something a little different to the critiques of it that mostly are focused on the graphics and how the graphics look like an old PlayStation 2 game or something like that. Because my particular concern is not actually graphics. I am not a gamer. I'm sympathetic to gamers. I don't think gamers are bad people, which is a big change of pace from a lot of media. But I just don't identify as a gamer myself because I don't really play video games for the sake of playing video games. I love certain video games. I was a gamer when I was a kid with the original Nintendo, the NES, but since then, I fall in love with certain video games because I like the setting, I like the ideas for whatever it is. So my favorite video game, for example, is Sakura Wars, which was a game that was never actually released in North America. It came out in the 1990s, and it's a combat RPG dating simulation game that is it's anime style and it's very heavily steeped in Japanese pop culture and Japanese history with this really engaging sort of steampunk Victorian sci-fi kind of setting, industrial technology. You have these magical girls who power these mecha battle suits, these sort of steampunk looking battle suits, fighting against the demon hordes trying to take over Tokyo. And so it's a very engaging game. It hits a lot of notes for me with Japanese culture and history and anime style and steampunk and so on. Red Dead Redemption, I love that series. I play a lot of Red Dead Online, as you may have seen my video of my favorite kill ever in that game. And that one is the setting. It's the Wild West setting. And in that case, it is the graphics because the beautiful setting and these photorealistic visuals of this condensation of the natural beauties of the United States into this small little gaming world is just mwah. That's why I love that game. I've been playing a lot of Star Trek Online lately because I've also just been craving actual Star Trek. That's not what passes for Star Trek today on television. So I've been playing a lot of that. So I have to be engaged with the subject matter. So theoretically, uh, Skull Island Rise of Kong should automatically pique my interest, which it does because it's a King Kong game. And I don't automatically discount the graphics either. I can appreciate more simplified graphics. I can appreciate it having a chunkier and cartoonier sort of style. Another one of my favorite video games is Song of the Deep, which is a very, very graphically simple game. You're just taking the submarine, little steampunk submarine around underwater. It's very much influenced by Victorian science fiction, the films of the studio that does Song of the Deep, Song of the Sea, sorry, that movie, and Studio Ghibli as well. It's got a very Ghibli-esque feel to it. I love that game, and that game is so simple. You could probably run it off of a phone. Frankly, it doesn't really probably need a whole Xbox One, but it captures my interest, and I very much enjoy it. So that I'm not worried about the graphics for Skull Island: Rise of Kong. Um, and then you also have you get with the colossal edition package, the more expensive version of it, even comes with all these different filters and stuff like that. So you can make Kong different colors. So you can make them like the Rankin Bass Kong, probably something like that. And the video filter, so you can make it like black and white, so you can look like the original King Kong, 1933. That part's all fine. I'm not worried about that. Where I have my reservations is the fact that it's based on the Joe DeVito King Kong of Skull Island franchise, which is, I've talked about it before. I talked about it in my review of the Mezco figure, which is based on that franchise, and I talked about the book, Kong King of Skull Island, in that other video, which I will link to up there. Um, it's it's interesting as another alternative franchise for Kong, based on Joe DeVito's rewrite of the original novel, trying to create a new copyrightable version that DeVito and the Merian C. Cooper estate can profit off of because they don't control the original novel is public domain. The 1933 movie belongs to RKO via Warner Brothers, TBS, whatever it is. Um, there's all these versions of Kong out there that the Merian C. Cooper estate themselves can't profit off of. So to work with Joe DeVito to develop their own version of it, I understand that. But it does have some of the same weaknesses that I've critiqued with the MonsterVerse, which is when you start inventing monsters for Kong to fight, it starts to you run into the danger of having all of these fantastic and strange monsters that overshadow Kong himself. Um, and that's what you don't want. You don't want to have monsters, whether that's skull crawlers or whether that's giant crab things or God, the king of the Death Runners, or whatever, that are more impressive and stranger and potentially more interesting, depending on your point of view, than Kong himself is. Kong works because he is the most strange and impressive and startling and awe-inspiring thing in his environment. Right? Dinosaurs would be one thing, but then you throw a gigantic ape in there fighting the dinosaurs, and Kong still comes out looking really good. Right? The fact that he's fighting dinosaurs adds to his coolness. Whereas if you start trying to invent a whole lot of copyrightable animals for monsters for Kong to fight, then you run the risk of them being stranger and more interesting than he is, and that takes away from Kong. All right, so that's the thing that worries me. I don't care about the graphics, the gameplay as much as I do about the story and how it presents Kong. One thing that seems to be lacking in the trailers is a sense of scale. Right? How big is Kong? Well, when you have the camera way up here and he's fighting monsters the same size as him, you lack that sense of scale, that sense of perspective, and that's the weak part as well. I could even like, okay, it's video game dinosaurs, video game monsters, okay, sure, but then you make Kong look small, and then at what point does it cease to be a Kong game? So like Kong, you want a sense of scale because he's a giant ape. If I was going to make a Kong video game myself, I would actually want to pull a lot of influence from the Transformers War for Cybertron games. Because I thought those ones actually play with perspective really well. Because you have these situations where you're playing as Optimus Prime in the foreground, and in the background is like Metroplex stomping around. Or when you switch to playing as Grimlock, Grimlock's a larger transformer, so now you have this larger sense of scale, and the camera does pan up, but now you're fighting smaller enemies. So it gives you that sense of scale that seems to be lacking from this one. So if I was making a Kong game, 1933 King Kong the movie, the video game, then I would want to have like where you're playing as Jack Driscoll running through the forest chasing after Kong, and in the background you see Kong looking massive, and the camera's like way down here. And then maybe you can bounce back and forth between two of them. But if you bounce over to Kong, then yeah, the camera goes up a bit, but now you're fighting either the bigger animals or you're fighting the smaller animals. So you get that sense of scale, maybe bounce around between the two of them to solve problems. So like there's a chasm that Jack Driscoll can't cross, so you flip to Kong and he knocks a tree over and he crosses it, and then Jack Driscoll can follow. Stuff like that. You're in New York, you can be either at the ground level chasing Kong through the streets, or you can be higher as you're Kong stomping through the buildings and climbing the buildings and that sort of thing. Bouncing back and forth between those two perspectives to get that sense of scale that you want for a giant monster in King Kong. However, this game, according to the trailer, is set a century before the original movie and is the rise of Kong, right? So Kong isn't king yet, so maybe that sense of scale where he seems smaller actually works for the story because it's Kong fighting these larger animals, these larger monsters on his road to becoming King Kong. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this game. I hope it's good. I don't hope it's bad. I hope it's actually good. We'll see when the reviews come in. I probably won't rush out to get it. Or if I do, I might end up regretting it and selling it in short order. Who knows? But I don't hope it's bad. I hope it's okay. I just have these general misgivings with the whole um, King Kong of Skull Island franchise that is shared with the Monsterverse in terms of creating all these monsters that are more interesting than Kong himself is, or at least more awe-inspiring, larger, weirder than Kong himself is, that ends up overshadowing Kong. I'm worried about that, and I have my misgivings about the sense of scale. As far as the graphics, the more cartoony style, well, we'll see how that looks in the final product, and even how that looks. Maybe if you put like the other filters on there, like the black and white filter or whatever, we'll see. We'll see when the actual game is released. In the meantime, uh, Thursday, 7:15 Mountain Time. Sorry if that's too late for a lot of you out there, but 7:15 Mountain Time on Thursday here. Um, we'll be doing our next live stream talking about dinosaurs and prehistoric animals in fact and fiction. So do join us then.